The shoulder rig is the most commonly used support system for video when you want to achieve movement in a shot.
And thankfully they've come down in price a lot in the past years.
But a good shoulder rig, packed with features, can still cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars.
And the cheaper alternatives aren't adapted to people who want to shoot with a compact mirrorless camera that doesn't have an external monitor.
And that's why we decided to design and build our own shoulder rig using 3D printed parts and affordable aluminum tubes.
This shoulder rig has adjustable rosette arms, a bunch of mounting points for accessories, and it's completely modular.
It's designed specifically for shooting with your camera's LCD screen without being cross-eyed the whole time.
Making this shoulder rig costs less than $50 of materials, and of course the STL files to 3D print the parts will be available in the video description.
So if this sounds like something you'd like to use for your next projects, watch along as we build and test this DIY shoulder rig. Let's go to the workshop.
So let's take a look at what you need to make this shoulder rig. Let's start with the most important part on which the whole shoulder rig is designed, and it's the P200 quick release plate. It's the cheapest base plate you can buy, and many brands make the exact same design, and it comes with a Manfrotto plate.
Next, you will also need 1-inch aluminum tubes, and for the lengths you will need one of 11.5, 6.5, and two of 3.5 inches.
And now onto the 3D printed parts. You'll need the base plate, a shoulder pad, the two rosette handles, 4 small knobs, 1 big knob, 2 end rosette connectors, 2 100-degree rosette connectors, and 2 80-degree rosette connectors. All the parts were printed in PETG at a 50% gyroid infill and 3 walls.
As for the hardware, you will need 3 types of screws, but all of them are 1/4-20 screws. First, 3/8 long button head screws. Secondly, 1-inch long button head screws. Finally, 1 1/4-inch long X head screws. And of course, you will also need a 1/4-20 X nuts.
And here are the tools that you'll need. First, you need to know that aluminum tubes come in 8 feet length. So to cut them to the right length, you will need a pipe cutter like this one, which you can find for cheap on Amazon. To clean up the pipes after cutting them, you can use a deburring tool. And to assemble your shoulder rig, you can just use a screwdriver, or to make the process a bit faster, you can use a drill.
So if some parts don't fit perfectly in place, you can add a drop of super glue to hold them together. The sandpaper can be used to clean up some 3D printed parts or the aluminum tubes. Finally, some clear hockey tape to add friction to a specific part that you will see later in this video.
So let's assemble the shoulder rig, starting with the baseplate assembly. So take your 3D printed baseplate and your P200 quick release baseplate and lay it on there with the knob on the side that can turn freely. Next, flip the pieces over, take your 4 screws and insert them in the 4 bigger holes. Once the screws are in and everything's aligned, you can simply screw them in place.
So now flip the base plate and take out the Manfrotto plate. So line up this pin to this hole over here. Once these screws are lined up and the Manfrotto plate is flush with your base plate, you can start screwing them.
Now take out the big 3D printed knob, a hex head screw, and a hex nut, and you can insert the nut right here on the base plate. Once that's done, you can insert the hex screw inside of the knob. Then you can screw the knob from the bottom into the front of the base plate, just like this.
For this next step, take out your 11.5-inch tube, your shoulder pad, 4 X nuts, and 4 3/8 screws.
What makes this shoulder rig modular is that you can easily assemble and disassemble it just with screws, because some of the parts have captive hex nuts inside, which you can just screw into super easily. So before assembling anything on each part that has a hole like this, make sure to take a hex nut and insert it in place. And if the nut doesn't go in all the way, you can just screw in another screw and pull until it's set in. So for these parts, you have to insert 2 nuts here and 2 nuts here.
Now insert the tube in the base plate, like this, and now screw in the 3/8 screws. Make sure to not tighten them too much, or else the 3D printed parts might crack. After that, insert the shoulder pad in the tube, put in the screws,
but don't tighten them just yet, because you want to make sure the pad is perfectly upright. For the next step, take out your 6.5-inch tube and mark it at 1 3/4 inches. Now take out your hockey tape and wrap it around the tube 3 times side by side. Now, before installing your rosette end caps, make sure that you insert the 3 hex nuts inside each one of them. Make sure that you only tighten a little bit on one side and then tighten the rest of the way on the other side, but not too much. Before installing the second end cap, insert the tube inside of the front of the shoulder rig and make sure that the longer side of the tube, besides the tape, goes on the left.
Now let's make the left arm. Take out the 3D printed handle, the 100-degree connector, the 80-degree connector, and the 2 small nubs. And for the tube, the 3.5-inch one. You also need 4 3/8 screws, 2 X-head screws, and a couple X-nuts. Start by inserting 2 nuts in each connector and 1 in the handle. Now take the tube and insert each connector on each side. The rosettes have to be on the same side. After that, take out your screws and insert them. Now tighten them a little bit on each side. This is how you assemble them. Make sure that the arm points outside of the shoulder rig.
Before screwing anything together, make sure that you insert your hex head screw inside of your small nubs. Because ours don't fit perfectly, we're just gonna add a little drop of super glue inside the nub. Now you can simply screw the arm on the shoulder rig at the angle you want, and same thing for the handle.
You can follow the same steps for the other arm and after that install it. With that done, your shoulder rig is finally finished.
Just like any high-end shoulder rig, this one has rosettes on the arm and handle so that you can easily adjust the angle however you want. Simply unscrew it, move it to the angle you want, and screw it back on. You can also loosen the front of the shoulder rig with this nub right here so that you can easily fold it for transport. Also, because it has a Manfrotto plate, you can dock it on any tripod.
Because you have a lot of 1/4-inch screw holes on the side and on the back of the shoulder rig, you can easily mount a V-mount plate or you can easily mount accessories like the V-mount plate or a You can easily mount accessories like a V-mount plate or a cold shoe mount.
So with the shoulder rig finished, let's test it.
We wanted to test the shoulder rig by shooting exclusively with it. What started as a simple test quickly turned into a spec ad. And in just one afternoon, we had plenty of BTS footage. So we decided to put together a full-length video about the shoulder rig, the spec ad, and how we used the rig to get the shots. For this shoot, we relied heavily on the rosettes. They made panning and tilt smoother with the inverted handles. And in situations where setting up a tripod wasn't practical, pressing the rig against the chest gave us stable, shake-free shots without the typical handheld look. The next video will cover the spec ad, the BTS, and exactly how we use the shoulder rig to make it happen. But first, here's a sneak peek at some of the final shots.
We hope this project was helpful to you and that you can use your own DIY shoulder rig for your next filmmaking projects.
Tell us in the comments what projects you'd like to see next, and we'll see you in our next video.
Bye bye!